Thank you. Representative Hinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. We have heard loud and clear that the CCP really uses their pressure tactics to take advantage of and manipulate certain markets using a lot of illicit means to do that, and they are able to dominate in those spaces because the playing field is not level. We saw what happened during COVID. That really, I think, spotlighted our over-reliance on China, specifically with the supply chain and what that did to affordability for American consumers, and that's really, I think, our focus going forward as we talk about critical minerals and how many things they're in. We talk about how is that affordable for consumers, and I think the CCP's goal is understanding those and how geopolitical they are in nature and how they fit into the bigger strategy that we're playing here. I think it is apparent that we cannot let their dominance grow further, and that's why I think these conversations about how we level the playing field, what we do strategy-wise going forward are so critical. So what I want to talk about today is how they've been able to do this, how they've been able to aggressively undercut not only the prices but dominate foreign markets, and we've seen them use that playbook specifically in the auto industry. Can you discuss, maybe, Mr. Slauster, the ways in which they are using their undue influence and unfair practices to dominate those critical mineral supply chains, to impose the leverage over industries like the automotive industry? We saw that play out during COVID. We've seen a little recovery in the last few years, but how has that played out? And then using that as an example, specifically in the auto industry, how can we maintain affordability for American consumers as we're looking to maybe shift around our supply chains to not be so reliant on China?
Yeah, it's a really important point. I think the interesting thing, certainly about like rare earth magnetics, is relative to the total bill of materials on a car, it's a very insignificant portion. The cost, the bill of materials for the actual rare earth magnets inside an automobile, it's very small. But you can't build the car if you don't have the magnets. And think about what's happening today. In order to secure your magnet supply chain, and you're an automotive company, you're having to apply for a license, and you hope it gets approved. And you hope it gets approved so that you can keep your auto plant running. So think about the coercive effect of that. What do you think those companies have in the back of their minds when they're deciding where to build their next generation product right now, literally right now? Where should we site that plant? This is why having this sort of control is coercive and kind of seeps into the decisions of all of really corporate America, and I think that's why this is such a critical issue. As I said in my prepared testimony, this industry is small. It's tens of billions of dollars, but there's trillions of economic activity downstream that it impacts, and that's why this issue just has to be taken off the table.
Yeah. Given their price manipulation and, of course, global dominance in critical mineral supply chain, do you think that Chinese auto manufacturers pose an existential threat to our American manufacturers because they have the control over these mechanisms?
Well, I think China has very astutely recognized that the rare earth industry, while it may be a small industry, is absolutely vital to competitiveness in the downstream industries of the future, not just cars. One thing we talk about a lot is physical AI, robotics. Robotics are probably going to be the largest industry the world has ever seen. All of the motion in a robot is rare earth magnet actuators. It's not just the products of today, but it's the products of tomorrow. And absolutely, if you control the upstream supply chain, you can become enormously competitive and dominant downstream. And just look at Europe's auto market today and how many Chinese cars are sold in Europe today. Yeah. And I think it's no accident that that's happened.
So I think I know your answer probably to this next one then. Should we allow Chinese manufacturers to make their cars here? Should we allow them to develop batteries and advance that supply chain here in the United States?
You know, I'm going to keep my comments isolated to the rare earth supply chain, but that does not sound like a great outcome to me, no.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so we know that our allies, you talk about Europe, they didn't do enough to thwart the threat of China's dominance in rare earths. We filed a World Trade Organization complaint only that caused China, of course, to shift their tactics in this space. So they've always found ways to kind of dodge and go around it, but thankfully we're seeing some pushback there from the Trump administration. We know China was also able to dominate the lithium industry specifically in a very short time span. And if it took, as we know, less than a decade to really control such a pivotal part of the supply chain, what would you say, Mr. Evans, is the next thing that we need to address now, right? I think my colleague talked about looking ahead and playing the long game here. Is there any place that's kind of a blind spot for us outside of lithium that we need to be looking at to get ahead of this?
I can't comment as much about minerals outside of lithium, but I think there are other examples that are on the critical minerals list that came out that are all important, whether they be related to some of the gallium and others that are used in small quantities. I don't know if all those are getting the same attention. Antimony, there's a variety. Again, it has to be a holistic look, even with our neighbors like Canada and other allied nations. But I'm hoping, the question was asked earlier, when's the moment? I'm hoping it's now. That we take a look at what kind of threats these have, what ability we have in this country to actually respond. And the question you asked earlier, I think it's tough for the automotive manufacturers because you have to get a foot in both worlds. So I have no choice but to buy from the Chinese. So, and they have global markets. They can suffer the same consequences where the Chinese government can actually, literally just one company can't buy here anymore, as punishment. So until we put alternatives for them, and I'm not saying that we wholesale, we're completely independent, but alternatives that are either here or in allied countries, I think it's very difficult for the automotive manufacturers, I think it's like 4% of our GDP, to actually make clean decisions like that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.